So my name is Paul Beales, and I work for the Animal and Plant Health Agency, and I work actually specifically within the Plant Health and Seed Inspectorate. I have a really sort of kind of wide remit, really, primarily really in the sort of the technical aspects of some of the work that we do there. So our plant health and seed inspectors are a broad group of people that are basically based all around the country, and we're primarily looking out for plant pests and diseases that could impact our economy, our environment, or even our social well-being, and preventing them coming into the country, or if they come into the country, working out ways to eradicate them, to slow the spread of them down while we learn more about them as well. So it's all about biosecurity, really. So we have this thing, I suppose it's called it's like a biosecurity continuum. And what we have in place is reconnaissance across the world, really looking out what's out there, what pests and diseases are out there. And with the communication as it is these days, we've got a lot more opportunities to spot diseases and pests before they actually come into the country. So a lot of work's done working with colleagues, working with international plant protection organisations, working with European plant protection organisations. All together, then we get an understanding of what's out there and what's the risk if it comes in. Could it come in and cause a viable population on our plants? So when I started working in the lab back in 1997, before I moved to become a plant health and seed, working for the Plant Health and Seed Inspectorate, probably the first one that I encountered was a disease called Phytophthora ramorum. This was a disease that was impacting oak trees, or a certain type of oak tree in America, causing massive impact, impacting huge numbers of trees, particularly around the sort of California and up that sort of western coast region there. We then started seeing it in Europe as well. And again, what I mentioned earlier about this sort of reconnaissance and sort of this understanding what was happening, it was like we were very aware of it, then we got it, and it hit hard in about 2002. We were in the lab, I was working in the lab there, and we had the first finding come in, and we identified it and saw it was Phytophthora ramorum. And subsequently, that sort of really led to a huge amount of work specifically on one disease, where prior to that we were like looking at all these diseases. That really focuses in on this one disease because we needed to understand it. We needed to work out a lot of, when you have a new finding such as this, it takes time to sort of understand it, particularly if it's something we've not seen before. We need to understand its pathology. We understand how many hosts does it affect. Does it affect this host really badly and this one not at all? Or does it affect, and are those hosts of significance to our economy, environment, social well-being, etc.? So that was one big one. And there were lots of little, we often find, a few diseases per year. Often, they're usually pests and diseases that we know about that have changed their host range a little bit. But then probably the next big one was ash dieback. I was very involved with from the first finding of that in the UK, carrying out the diagnostics of it, working with the ministers to help work out a survey, how we sort of plan all that. How do we survey the whole country in a week, for example? And bringing that all together and working with many other people, this is not a sole effort here. But through that, we discovered the sporing structure of it. That was something that was brand new. We'd never seen that before. We were sort of saying, well, it must be here, but we never found it. And we were out one day doing some work with some new piece of kit, which is a little portable molecular device. And we thought, hang on, this looks a little bit like it, and potentially this sporing structure. Did a test, proved it there and then in the field. And so then that was, for me, that was a very exciting sort of highlight. when we were looking, I mentioned about Phytophthora ramorum earlier, when we were doing that, we had some samples kind of come through to look at, and they didn't look like the Phytophthora ramorum we were used to. There's lots of different Phytophoras out there, and it was like, but it doesn't look like any of the others. And that was really exciting for me because it was like, again, a new species that never been recorded before. And so I had an opportunity to name it, and we named it after the area it was found, which was Cornwall, the old Cornish name for Cornwall, Cano. So it's Phytophthora canovii. So that kind of came out as a result, really, of all the work that was being done looking for Phytophthora ramorum. I would say one of the biggest UK success stories is Colorado beetle. Colorado beetle is why we do what we do. It's almost was the start of plant health service in the UK, was a Colorado beetle. And when that was first found in the UK, there was notices produced. It's amazing. They were put up in police stations, and it was like, we need you to kind of come and find this pest, and if you find it, bring it into the police station, and we'll destroy it and clear it up. We managed to eradicate it. It was a big citizen science impact event. And people these days still remember those posters that were up in the police stations. And ever since then, we have findings of it every year, but it's never established. With other parts of Europe, it really devastates. It's a pest of potatoes, and it chews away the potato leaves, and it's quite devastating for that. It's a really big success story, that one. Others, we are successful in a kind of different way. We've restricted the movement of them, slowed down the spread, so that we can understand them better. So then we can work with universities and the like to and modelers that identify, what's the potential extent of them, to kind of like slow that spread and get an understanding of that organism, that pest or that disease, in such a way that you can then manage it better. And then that's helping people, businesses, etc., and trade, more, in things that potentially could have wiped out a particular sort of niche area potentially. When I was doing because I'm old, where I was doing the O-levels and A-levels and that, I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that stage, and I was very much open to what was my highest grades and keep moving into that route, which tended to be the sciences. So biology, physics and chemistry was where I won. I was rubbish at physics, so then that narrowed it down to biology and chemistry. I wasn't particularly good at chemistry, so that was biology. So then I went to the what is now University of West of England. At that time it was Bristol Polytechnic, and studied applied biology. Now, I was really inspired by the people there. There was Dr. Peter Spencer Phillips, who was also my personal tutor, who was the plant pathologist there, and he'd worked on a specific group, downy mildews, we call them, of plant pathogens, and also the plant pathology group within the applied biology group was really small, and I quite like that. So I kind of like that. We were just a small group of us, and we just did this plant, and I just loved it. It was fab. And then I did a project with in plant pathology then, when I got my first degree then. And then after that, it was sort of like, I suppose I grew up in the countryside, so I had a sort of an awareness of plants and a passion for plants generally. Didn't probably know much about diseases of them really, although I did find a little photograph of me looking at the underside of the rhododendron leaf when I was about 2, which might have been why then I moved from that degree to doing a PhD in rhododendron powdery mildew. Rhododendron play a big part in my life. It comes up later with Phytophoras as well. But that was it. And so I worked at University of Hertfordshire there on my PhD, which was on rhododendron powdery mildew, a new disease that had come in just a few years earlier. And that was really great fun. Dr. Avis Hall there was an inspiration there. She was a massive passionate lady who really, inspired me to keep moving into this area and pushing into plant pathology. And she showed me the we didn't just focus on one area. She showed me the sort of the breadth of plant pathology and how wide that area can take. So so I did that, did my PhD, but whilst doing my PhD, the particular disease that I had studied for that first came into the country through the inspection service had spotted it, and the diagnosticians in the labs had done the diagnosis. And they were based at Harpenden, which is quite close to the University of Hertfordshire at the time. So I went and visited them and spoke with the key scientists there and those that had spotted it and everything to learn more about it and understand it while I was doing my PhD. And I remember going in there one day, and there was this desk, and it was full of plants from all around the world. And it was like, oh my goodness. And it was just, and I was like, what's this then? And they were like, well, explain what we did. And it was like, and it's like CSI for plants, basically. And it was like all these dying, ill plants. And I was like, this is great. You can poke them and they don't scream. You can kind of like, they don't run away. They don't not turn up for an appointment. They're all here just to look at and identify what the primary cause of this death is and have a bit of, and that was really exciting. Then, when I finished my PhD, it sort of all fell in place, really, that for me, that there was a move to centralise all of the plant health, food, and other areas into one location, which was York. And it was called the Central Science Laboratory, which was built it was opened in 1997. And that was the person that did the job that was looking at all these plants, this diagnostic job, the CSI job, didn't want to move up. And so there was this opening. And because I already knew the work, I knew the people, it helped me at interview to kind of like, I knew I was really enthusiastic and excited about that. So although the job I took wasn't necessarily the grade I could have got because I had a PhD, I had the other qualifications, I came in at a low grade because it's such an exciting job. And it was just something that didn't matter. I just wanted that. But that has helped me, having the PhD, in then when I worked as a diagnostician in the lab, as a fungal diagnostician, to then work in research. And so I did a lot of research into different groups of fungal diseases and that. And it gave me opportunities to do international work, to go overseas when there were new member states in the European Union and train their inspectors, to work there and find new diseases there and all this kind of thing. So I got an opportunity there to kind of spread my wings a little bit and go a little bit wider. And also speak at a lot of conferences in the USA and other parts of the world, really. So although there was a national aspect to it, which was fab, it gave me also this sort of wider sort of international opportunities, really, there. And then from that, it was sort of like a lot of my work sort of moved from, I was doing diagnostics, but the natural move as you sort of progress in your career, it becomes a little bit more desk-bound, a little bit more typey sort of management side. And it's sort of like, and then this opportunity arose to actually pick up on, it was actually on public engagement for plant health, in fact. And I applied for that and got that job, which was fantastic. It was so exciting. So just to change, it was quite a leap for me because it was a bit of a different area. It was more in sort of, like I said, engagement and that side of thing. But then I was in the other side. I was the ones that were sending the samples to the lab, and I got to know all the inspectors. And I also sort of, because of my research background and I then sort of have oversight of the training element for our plant health and seed inspectors, but also to improve their toolkit. That's how I like to look at it. So when they go in the field, they've got something better and new to use to help with the diagnostics. So we're working at developing diagnostics at points of entry and working alongside that. So there's many aspects of the sort of work that I do, and one of which is engagement, and that's really communicating plant health to trade, to academics, to the general public, and raising the importance of good biosecurity practices. So we do things like Chelsea Flower Show, which is fantastic, just an exciting event, a very surreal event in some respects, but a great opportunity to really meet people and talk with people what they believe the issues are. And we did one recently on oak trees. And my goodness, you realise the passion in the public on when you start talking about diseases of a particular tree and how, if they really establish how they could really impact, you know, we could lose them. Like some people, you know, still remember Dutch elm disease, where we lost 70% of our elm population in a decade. And, you know, we don't want that happening to our other trees and the like. So that's why the work that I do now is sort of very much that awareness side, but also the inspection in the field to prevent plant pests and diseases coming into the country and causing an impact. I like the diversity in the job. The fact that I'm not just doing one thing. I can, in a day, I can be talking with people that are flying drones, that are developing new molecular tests. I can then speak to somebody in France about a new disease that they've discovered there, or a disease that we have that they have more information on. I can then join another meeting where, you know, I'm talking specifically about sort of helping out on a particular pest or disease. I could be then doing something with school children on fantastic bugs on a specific tree, or with the general public, or with you know, somewhere else. You know, we write books, we've written a couple of books and things like that. So opportunities to do publications and that, and also, you know, research papers, opportunities, things like that. So you could be doing a bit of edit or editing other people's work as well, papers and things like that. So you get to see it firsthand before it's really published, which is quite exciting as well. I think the diversity, I think the breadth of work, I think you're not just stuck there just always doing the same old thing. And I think the freedom in the work as well, because it's so broad, there's a lot of opportunities to do different things and to almost taste and see some of the areas, to sort of have a, you know, there are opportunities to try an area. You might want to work in accreditation, you might work more closely with policy, you might want to work you know, sort of more in the academic route really, and or the training route, or whatever. And I think there's that breadth of you can try it, and if you really realise that's not something you're passionate about, you can then move into another area. And I think that's what I like, you know, within my work areas. There really is that flexibility and that breadth of opportunity, I suppose.